We are live streaming all week from the International Manufacturing Technology Show in Chicago, Illinois, as part of the Smart Force Student Summit, part of our relationship with FANUC. My name is Matt Kirkner, and I am the host of the Tech Ed Podcast. Just really fascinating and phenomenal discussions all week with some of the biggest names, the biggest leaders in technical education, people doing really, really innovative things. And this next guest and his organization absolutely fit that bill. I'll tell you, he came a long way to be here with us. I'm not sure he came all the way from Birmingham, UK to Chicago just to be on the Tech Ed Podcast, but we're going to pretend that that's the case, that Mr. Simon Leigh is with us. He's the Senior Manager of Design and Manufacturing Education Strategy for a company very well known, I would guess, to most of our listeners, a company called Autodesk. We'll talk a little bit more about Autodesk. We'll talk a little bit more about Simon, but first, Simon, thanks so much for being on.
No, thank you for having me. Let's just say I came directly for this episode. Yeah.
Perfect, absolutely. All the way from Birmingham, UK to Chicago, Illinois for the Tech Ed Podcast is Mr. Simon Leigh. And we're going to ask our first question, Simon, and that is this. You know, we know Autodesk. A lot of us have worked in the world of manufacturing. We have a good understanding of CAD. We have a good understanding of design, most of us anyway. Autodesk, an amazing company, but also an amazing company in the world of education. As a former educator, tell us a little bit about your work in the education field as part of Autodesk.
Yeah, so I'm actually quite, just to tell your audience, I'm actually quite new to Autodesk education. So I was an educator for about 10 years before this in a 4-year mechanical engineering program. So I've been there in that educator role. So yeah, I'm probably about 50, 60 days into this new job. So yeah, Autodesk obviously well known in the education sphere, as you said. We'll offer all our software free to educators and students, so that's across design and manufacturing, architecture, engineering, construction, and media entertainment as well.
So an interesting transition. So you're in the classroom. Were you a professor in a 4-year university? Was that the role?
Reader, principal lecturer. So yeah.
Okay, yeah. And so you're working with students. You're educating them on the next generation of technology. You've got a chemistry degree, I understand, which is a little bit of an interesting
interesting
transition.
Career segue. Yeah.
So you're making a ton of these, right? You go from a chemistry degree to teaching in a mechanical engineering institution, mechanical engineering to Autodesk. What drew you to kind of the private industry side of things from the world of education?
I think it's been able to have that impact for a larger group of students. So I rolled out some Autodesk software as part of my Mech Eng program, so for about 1,000 to 1,200 students. Wow. That's while I was there. But it's been able to have that impact then for more people and be able to take those educators on a similar journey or their own version of that journey, and just seeing what happens and equipping those students with those skills. So it's an impact move for me.
Awesome. So that 1,000 to 1,200 students, was that over the course of the entire time in education?
That was in course of certainly the rollout of education, the Autodesk software, yeah.
Yeah, and it really just shows the power of an educator. And as much as we have so many former educators working in the world of technology, so many people here at IMTS working on cutting-edge technology, it really is a testament to the great opportunities from the standpoint of careers, the great opportunity from the standpoint of working with different software, working with different technology, including Autodesk. Do you have a specific memory of a student maybe that you inspired during your time as an educator?
Wow, that's an interesting one. There's been lots.
Yeah.
I had a comment on my LinkedIn this morning, just a student saying they got a new job and thanking me for helping them get to that journey, and that's what really matters to me is seeing them kind of achieve their goals and that kind of future life.
So just this morning, an example of that, and really kind of speaks to the leverage that you have in the world of education.
Absolutely,
you think about inspiring 1,000, 1,200 students over that career in the education side, and then all of those students going out in the world and many of them doing big things and kind of carrying that torch. And so really, really awesome, again, testament to the great value of educators, and in this case, at a 4-year mechanical engineering program. Let's turn the sights back to the world of Autodesk. You know, Autodesk, a lot of us think of it as a manufacturing software, but is Autodesk just used in manufacturing? Tell us about all the different applications and all the different career fields that exist in the world of design and leveraging the Autodesk technology.
Well, yeah, I mentioned, so we obviously have quite a big profile in design and manufacturing, so things like our Fusion platform for CAD and for manufacturing. Beyond that, we go into media entertainment, so things like Maya, into Revit, so architecture, engineering, construction. So we've got a lot of footprint in all the different industries.
So is that, give us some examples of, like healthcare? Do you have applications in healthcare? You have applications in construction?
It's difficult to pinpoint because we have such a broad product portfolio. We see students go out into those industries. We see customers in those industries as well.
Absolutely. So let's turn our sights now to this study that you recently did, and you did it with the American Society of Mechanical Engineers. First of all, I bet they were great to have you as a part of that study, right? Because your degree and your chemistry degree, your experience in mechanical engineering. So now you get over and you get to work on this really cool study along with that organization. Tell us about the study.
So the study was about looking at the future of manufacturing roles. So really trying to understand what that future is going to look like in 3, 5, 10 years, that kind of time frame. So speaking to industrialists and educators from across the US, Canada and UK, so really getting their input and being able to capture what they think is going to happen.
What do they think is going to happen?
So we looked at 3 roles. So we looked at mechanical engineer, CNC machinist and manufacturing engineer.
Okay.
And what dropped out of it was essentially the convergence of these roles, so they're going to get closer together. So your mechanical engineer is going to get a little bit more towards the manufacturing and implementation side, and then people like the CNC machinist are going to go more towards the design end. So really being involved earlier in the process. It really speaks to this need to be more agile, drive productivity. So you can't design something if you can't manufacture it efficiently. So that's really where we can see these blending of roles. What also dropped out was actually, you hear this fallacy that industry and academia don't agree on a lot, but what drops out of the research is they agree on quite a bit.
Sure. Yeah.
Educators want to be doing good things for their students and placing students in high-tech jobs.
Sure.
Industry want those students, and we're, in this study, hopefully put a pin in the sand and provide some concrete data that we can base kind of decisions on.
So were you polling both educators and industrial employers as part of the study? And tell us a little bit about that process of gleaning their information, understanding where they're coming from.
So a lot of that was through things like interviews and surveys, and being able to then plot it out. And it was interesting to things like Industry 4.0. Obviously, your audience knows Industry 4.0.
Of course.
And you obviously know Industry 4.0.
I like to think so. Yeah, or I pretend to pretty well, right?
So. Yep. Everyone thinks of it as this new thing, and it's not. We saw in some of the data these industry customers, they're already on their second iteration of things like cloud, like AI, and machine learning. So
sure.
It was interesting to see that in the data as well.
Absolutely. So you've got a couple things that we kind of have to unpack a little bit in those last couple of answers. The first one is on this whole topic of convergences. It just seems like so many of our episodes come back to things like we talked with Laura Kohler, for instance, who's the senior vice president of Kohler, the company that produces all the bathroom fixtures and so on, standby electric generators, the whole thing. And we talked with her about the convergence of things like art and entertainment, or art and manufacturing, rather. So those things are converging. What we see a lot of times in the world of manufacturing on the technology side are things like, it used to be good enough to be a robot operator or then a PLC programmer. Maybe you understand electromechanical technology, or you understand fluid power, mechanical drives, motor control, these types of things. And now it's like, all right, we need to know at least a little bit of all those things as we're walking into the manufacturing floor. And it sounds like in this whole world of mechanical design, of machining and so on, that you're seeing exactly those same convergences, that it's not good enough just to be somebody that understands the mechanical design side of things, or understands G-code and M-code and has the ability to program Cartesian coordinates into a machining center. But those types of careers are starting to converge. Is that what you're seeing? Exactly what you're seeing?
Absolutely. It's something I used to tell my students as well. So for ones who used to want to specialise in mechanical engineering, I said, look at an engine. That's a mechanical part, but it doesn't work without any wiring. So you need to have an appreciation for all these other disciplines to do your job.
So one of the guests that we had on the podcast has probably been about a year, Mark Money, who's the chancellor of the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee, an R1 research institution about 80 miles north of where we are today in Chicago. And Mark just talked all about how a lot of the paradigms in higher education, and especially in the university setting, are just going to be totally kind of dismantled and blown up over the course of the next 10 years. And so I guess my question, Simon, would be if I'm an educator, if I'm a professor at a 4-year institution, I've been teaching a certain way, I'm used to maybe one-to-many lectures, and so on. As you start thinking about, especially given your experience in higher education, how that world is going to change, what do our educators need to be thinking about? How does the classroom and our methodology of teaching need to change?
It's a difficult question. It's obviously a lot of the transformation that happened was driven by the pandemic.
Right.
So move to online, hybrid, those kind of things. What that looks like going forward is an open question at the moment. So we're seeing lots of trends which are impacting education. So I guess we can call it almost the Amazon effect with education, so tailored experiences, those kind of things. Some people are embracing hybrid, some people are pulling away from hybrid. Yeah, it's an interesting time. We don't know what education is going to look like. From a personal perspective, it's all got to be about experiences, I think.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah.
The one-to-many stand-up in front of stage on the stage lecture is, from my personal opinion, is it a format going forward? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either. It's, especially for some of our more entrenched educators, they defend that way of teaching because they like to teach that way. But in the end, it really should be about the students, right? It's more about what the students need to learn and how they need to learn it than how we want to deliver that learning. And we talk, and I've mentioned probably 150 times on the Tech Ed podcast how I grew up as a hands-on kinesthetic learner. I was always that person that, I could learn out of a book, I could read, I could sit through a lecture, I could take my notes, but nothing sunk in like getting your hands on something and really experiencing that, learning by doing. And it sounds like you're kind of saying the same thing. Is that
Absolutely,
fair to say?
yeah. Part of this research was about, obviously, so we did some research as a white paper, which people can go and look at. There's also an ebook for
Where do they find
educators. We'll give you some links to put in the show notes.
Okay, fantastic.
But we've tried to give some steps some small steps educators can take to start driving this change, because it's a difficult job. You've got to teach all the fundamental skills, but also have that forward-looking element as well. So what are the next things I need to be teaching? So you've got to try and pack all that into a 4-year course, which is getting even more difficult.
Absolutely.
So we tried to give some beginner steps that people can take. Because it's paralysing when you've got
Right.
when you hear words like digital transformation, it's a paralysing thing for people in education and industry.
Right, exactly
so
right.
we tried to give some steps they can at least take. It's the small wins.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So when you're driving out these Industry 4.0 technologies to companies, for instance, it's the small wins. What are the small things you can knock over to start moving towards this future?
I know you have an interest in additive manufacturing. You mentioned that when we were preparing for the show. Did you look at additive at all as part of the study, and how is that kind of disrupting the continuum of design and CNC manufacturing, subtractive manufacturing? Well, how does additive play
It was
in?
rolled into a study. It wasn't necessarily pulled out as a specific technology. It was kind of grouped into what we call Industry 4.0 technology. So data, IoT platforms, those kind of things. So it was rolled into
augmented reality, virtual reality,
yeah,
kind of all that.
it's that hit list of buzzwords.
Exactly. Yeah. We can almost kind of go through them in our sleep these days.
Yeah, I mean,
right?
we could do a whole podcast on additive. I say with my background in additive.
Exactly. So you mentioned that there were some suggestions, some advice extracted from the study for educators. What would they expect to see if they dove in there, as far as the type of advice that you're giving them in this world of changing technology?
I think the key takeaways were almost to build those relationships with industry. Industry's not full of scary people who don't want to talk to you. And the same is true of industrialists. They want to build those relationships with educators to make sure that kind of pipeline of talent is there.
Absolutely.
That's one of the big takeaways, I think.
Absolutely. We talk quite a bit. I spend a lot of time with both industrial employers and with educators, and it's interesting. In fact, you'll appreciate this story, as we're sitting across from a whole bunch of programmable logic controllers here at IMTS. So I got up in front of a group of educators. I spent my whole career in industry. I get up in front of these educators, and I'm talking about manufacturing technology. We're talking about automation. We're talking about robotics. What's a 6-axis robot? What's a collaborative robot? What's a Delta robot? Going through all these different technologies. Then we get onto programmable logic controllers, and I do about 5 minutes on PLCs and how they're the computers of manufacturing, and how in so many cases they're central to all these manufacturing processes. Got 5 minutes into this discussion before I realized that, while I thought I was talking about programmable logic controllers, my audience thought I was talking about professional learning communities, because they're both PLCs.
In the UK, that'd be private limited companies. Huh?
Yeah, exactly right. Absolutely. In fact, I've done business with a number of companies in the UK, and exactly right, PLC after the name of the company. So the point of that was that as we were talking to these educators, and you've made the point a number of times, and I agree with you, that industrial employers and educators, in as much as we think of those as really divergent worlds, in so many cases they have very, very common interests.
Absolutely,
if we kind of get them talking, but they do talk different languages. The other thing I'll tell you, and maybe you've seen some of this during your metamorphosis into private industry, I was working for a company about 7 years ago, and we had an instructor in an educational institution that called and had a problem that morning with one of the training systems they were using. And I was brand new to the company, and I just happened to be in the office, took the phone call. Well, to me, when somebody says, yeah, we've got a problem with this training system, we have a problem with this piece of equipment, my manufacturing brain is saying, line down, we need to get on this. Right? So I'm like, we're losing production. GM's going to be charging me $250,000 an hour if I don't get this figured out. I said, okay, I don't have the answer to your problem right now, but if I can get back to you within 2 hours, is that good enough? And the guy started laughing, and he said, well, no, really, anytime this month is fine. It doesn't have to be in the next 2 hours. And that was my introduction to the fact that this whole world of education was different from my world of industry. And I tell people it's not easier or harder. It really isn't. It's just different. And so we have to get people sitting around the table and having conversations about how it's different and once you get them talking, and we say, check the agendas at the door. Yeah, maybe you didn't vote for the last guy, and didn't both vote for the same guy in the last election, or woman, or what have you. But that doesn't mean that we can't, if we're really trying to do what's in the interest of students, that doesn't mean that we can't push that pedal forward. And it sounds like it's the same thing you found from your study.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, couldn't agree more.
So, how many days have you been in the States now?
I arrived Sunday, so a day.
Okay, and have you visited here before?
No, first time at IMTS.
First time here.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's interesting to see the scale of the show.
It is, yeah. And now have you done any? There's some big European shows in manufacturing. I know there's some huge German shows. Have you been a part of any of those in the past?
Yes, Form Next in the past.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, so you got a little bit of an idea of what it's like to be at a show with 2,000 exhibitors.
Yeah.
And it's just insane. I mean, if you don't come to this show, if you don't come to Chicago, Illinois, if you're not experiencing IMTS, it's really hard to kind of gather the scale of the show. And I remember the first time I was here, which is quite a number of years ago now. And I was like, I was in a booth, and I'm like, I'm going to take an afternoon and just kind of see what's here. But I didn't get through 25% of it in an afternoon. Have you had a chance to walk around it all yet?
A little bit. I walked in this morning and did what you said. I just paused and went, it's a big show.
It is. It's a
show.
really, really big show.
I saw something interesting the other day, that twice the number of additive companies here this year.
It was, really, from the last time?
Yep.
Yeah, and that whole space has just exploded. We're going to have later this week Juan Mario Gomez, who's the CEO of Exact Metal, doing really cool stuff in the world of metal 3D printing, and so you've got some companies that you're familiar with that have been doing this for a long time. Some of them that are obviously new, working on new technologies. You've got an understanding of additive. Have you seen anything since you got here on the additive side that's particularly interesting?
I want to go see the big Thermwood machine. They're meant to be printing 2 big parts over the course of a show.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
big polymer additive.
Awesome. Yeah, our last guest was from the ARM Institute. I spent some time at the LIFT Institute. If you're not familiar with the Institute, it's kind of a federally funded program depending upon the department. And this one was all around lightweight materials, and I was there. This is in Detroit, Michigan, a couple years ago. And they were 3D printing, like a building. I mean, it was just absolutely fascinating, the scale on which they're doing some of this. So that'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, it's certainly something I used to do in my former life. So we used to build large-scale polymer additive systems, but we used to do it in a teaching space.
Okay.
So taking our students in who maybe have never seen a 3D printer before and going, this is a desktop 3D printer and this is a large scale. So this is potentially what you could turn your ideas into.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's been interesting, I think, the last 6 years or so to see, I think early on people in the CNC world, people in the subtractive world, maybe a little bit intimidated, worried about the capabilities of additive. They've really kind of found their own spaces and solutions to the point now where we literally have, in some cases, machine tools that combine additive manufacturing with subtractive manufacturing on the same platform, getting the benefits of both. What are some of the other interesting advancements you've seen on the additive side, and then we'll get a little bit more into some of the Autodesk solutions.
So hybrid, as you said, so additive and subtractive, but also some of the work I was doing before I left my previous institution was incorporating electronics into those as well. So doing hybrid 5-axis additive, subtractive, and print electronics.
All on the same platform.
All in the same machine, yeah.
Wow, that's fascinating. And one of the things I haven't talked much about on the podcast is very early in my career, the first 4 or 5 years of executive business leadership, I led a high-tech company in the healthcare space, and at that point learned a ton about the whole electronic side. Obviously, printed circuit boards were at the heart of that. Surface mount technology was just starting to advance, and just where all that has come in now. And I guess I hadn't even realized that now we're converging all 3 of those technologies: additive, subtractive, and electronics.
Yeah, we were playing with ideas about being able to take product data back from physical objects. So actually, if someone's interacting with a physical object, if they touch a face, could that then feed back into the CAD and change the design on the fly?
Yeah, it's just fascinating where all this is going, how quickly we can innovate. What about Autodesk? What are some of the things that the technologies on offer from Autodesk at IMTS that people should be checking out?
So we've got 2 booths. We've got one for the main commercial customers. So that is looking at some of our CNC platforms, and things like generative as well. And just behind us, over the wall here, we've got our education booth. So putting students in front of platforms like Fusion to use it, experience it, and see what they can do with it.
Are you spending most of your time on the education side or on the...
A bit of everything, walking around and speaking to people, really.
Absolutely. Yeah. So tell us about your new role with Autodesk, and you said, what, 55 days in right
Something
now?
like that. That's what Workday told me the other day, yeah.
So you're an expert on everything Autodesk, right? Tell us a little bit about the role. What do you be responsible for, and what's going to keep you busy?
So for me, it's education strategy. So that's really talking to our education customers, understanding what they need from software. Mm-hmm. Also then talking to our commercial customers, understanding what they need from the workforce. So talking about things like the skills gap and trying to be that glue in the middle.
Awesome.
So deciding what experiences our students need, or our educators need, our student customers need, and then trying to plot a course through that, I guess.
Absolutely. Is that global? What's the
global?
Geography?
Yep.
So you'll be responsible for that around the globe.
Yep, global across secondary, post-secondary, and vocational.
We have the Western Hemisphere covered here at IMTS, right?
Yeah,
the largest and longest running manufacturing show in the Western Hemisphere, which I think runs from where, I guess, from your home country, the UK, right? Kind of runs right through Greenwich, doesn't it? And then around to the Prime Meridian. So you got this half of the globe covered here at the International Manufacturing Technology Show, which is absolutely perfect. Any other technologies you're really excited about looking at while you're here, Simon?
I don't think so. I'm just a design and manufacturing nerd, so I'm just going to go around and look at some big CNC machines. I think it's for me.
Absolutely, and me too. I can't wait to spend a little time walking around.
Yeah.
So here in the States, we have high school sophomores. Do you call them sophomores in the UK or second year? Or?
Not sure what the equivalent term is.
Okay, so if I'm in my second year of high school,
yep.
that here is a high school sophomore. One of the questions we ask every single guest here on the Tech Ed podcast is, if you had one piece of advice for that 15-year-old, 16-year-old sophomore in high school, what would that piece of advice be?
It's a tricky one, that is, isn't it? With my weird career path,
what would you tell the 16-year-old Simon Leigh if you had to tell him something?
If you want to make a difference, choose a career path that's going to make a difference. The ones that look attractive don't necessarily make for the attractive ones long term. So if you want to touch product, find a company where you're actually going to touch your product.
Absolutely.
And for me, it's always been about finding the roles that challenge you.
Sure.
So if you're not challenged, what's going to get you out of bed in the morning?
Absolutely.
You need to go home and even a little bit frustrated and come back the next morning with a desire to solve that challenge.
Absolutely. And careers in advanced manufacturing really do all three of those things, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, if one of the things, both of our kids are now out of high school, kind of moving through. One of them graduated from college, the other one is still in. But I insisted that both of them work in manufacturing during their post-high school career. Not that they're required to work there forever, but I wanted them to know that feeling of looking back over your shoulder at the end of the day and knowing that you produced a product, right? I mean, that is just, for me, was always just the greatest feeling. All those years of working in manufacturing, I was back in a machining company last week, just smelling cutting fluid and kind of just knowing what it's like to be in the world of manufacturing. But then all the amazing people that work in and around manufacturing, in and around STEM careers, I think sometimes we don't give those people enough credit. And I can tell you, my daughter, having worked at a precision machining company this last summer, one of her favorite things was going to work and just interacting with these people. Yep. She had an internship the year before, which was awesome for her, but she was in front of a computer the whole time doing artificial intelligence and data stuff. And now she gets to go out on the shop floor, interact with people in manufacturing, see what it's like to build a product. There's just no better feeling in the world than doing that. And no better feeling in the world, I would think, than being responsible for global education strategy for a company like Autodesk. I mean, what a huge role.
A bit of a dream job, yeah.
Absolutely. And you're the one that gets to do it.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. I mean, just going to your previous point as well, it's not an intentional segue. So something that dropped out of our research was that need for those soft skills, for being able to go out and communicate with people on the shop floor, with customers. Yep. Those are not going away. They're still going to be really important in the
Without
future.
question. Yeah, in fact, I think in some cases even more important, right? So you've got, especially now that we have more and more technology that is, again, innovating every single market space, having the ability to not just understand and interact with technology, but to be able to interact with people around that technology is a really, really important skill, and I think more important than ever, especially given the pandemic that we've been through and the fact that so many of us were separated from the world of interpersonal communication, interpersonal activity, especially depending on where our students were experiencing education. In some cases, hadn't been interacting with other human beings for well over a year during those really formative years. So you and I agree 100%, and that's another really, really interesting.
The interesting anecdote I've got on that was told to me by a wise person when I first started out as a teacher and educator. Was in a company, if you've got 100 people, you probably need 5 people who can do the hard sums, and 95 people who can interpret the data and talk to the customer.
Absolutely. Yep, that's exactly right. And especially in the world of manufacturing, that's the part that gets lost. And also the career opportunity, I think, that gets lost sometimes. You know, people think about careers in manufacturing. Well, maybe I don't want to work in an assembly cell. Maybe I don't want to operate and program a robot. Oh, my goodness. I mean, customer service, you've got people working in analysis, people working in data science, people working on the financial side of the business, people overseeing operations, working in quality. Just an incredible wide variety of career opportunities, and you get to touch every single one of them.
Absolutely, yeah. And we all know manufacturing has had this traditionally bad rap of being horrible and dirty, but you're going to go come to a show like this and see that it isn't.
That's exactly right.
It's high-tech, innovative, and people are doing some amazing stuff.
It really is. I mean, literally eat off the floor type of environments in many cases. You look at some of these clean technical environments, and not all manufacturers are like that, and it's a message to the ones that aren't that you're competing for talent with the ones that are. And if I'm walking into a manufacturing facility, a machining company, and it looks like a clean lab and it looks like a high-tech operation, those are the people that are competing with you for talent. So it's a good message for all of us.
Those are the images students are seeing.
Exactly. So that's it's a huge message then to our industrial employers as well, to make sure that you're showing your companies well and doing the job of helping students understand the great opportunities in technical education, the great opportunities in the world of industry and manufacturing. Our guest today is certainly somebody who understands those opportunities both from the education side and from the private industry side. Simon Leigh with Autodesk. What a great conversation. Thanks for spending some time here in the U.S.
Thank you.
Hope your trip has been great. Safe travels back to the UK.
Awesome. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you.